Rose turned to Jeffries. "Do you think she'll be able to learn what you've given her?" asked Rose. Jeffries stared at Rose for a moment, his eyes hardening before he spoke. "Oh, I'm more than sure of it, miss. Most animals take weeks to learn their first spell, and it took her only a few hours of practice before she was completing her first one. She's naturally talented, that young wolf," said Jeffries. Rose sat back and nodded slowly to herself. "So, what can we do to help her?" asked Samuel, leaning over the table. Jeffries looked over at him thoughtfully and began rubbing his chin with one paw. "There's plenty you can do for the girl," said Jeffries, sitting back in his chair and crossing his arms against his chest. "Make sure she's resting properly first and foremost. Youngling magicians tend to overdo it when they get started. It's hard not letting the power of their new ability consume their waking life. It's a natural part of becoming a proper magic user, being able to overtake that feeling and control your intent. She may sit up for hours at night practicing, which is good, as long as it's not affecting her daily life," said Jeffries. Jeffries made a series of quick motions with his paws, and a piece of paper from the desk next to the table lifted up and, curling through the air, floated to the table and landed before him. Jeffries produced a pen from his vest pocket and began drawing symbols on the paper. Once he was done, he slid the paper over to Rose and Samuel on the other side of the table. "Don't let her use spells that use combinations of these runes. They're dangerous to the user. I've added in a warning exactly like this in front of the booklet, but she may want to attempt them. I would advise against it until she's able to use spells without having to write them down. It's imperative that she learn the basics before launching into the more powerful spells. You'll know she's using them when the light from the competing spells turns a dull purple-black. Some of the magic in that book isn't for regular use, but I thought it better to learn of it rather than assume it's not an option if she needs it," said Jeffries. Rose and Samuel studied the paper in front of them. Rose noticed that most of the symbols had a sinister look to them, as though the pen bled while writing them, gouged and spread across the paper. Samuel folded up the paper and put it in his pants pocket. "All right, we'll make sure she doesn't get into this darker magic," said Samuel. Jeffrey sat forward, pressing his palms onto the table. "I'm sure you will. The last thing I can recommend is to be your friends. She's obviously not used to having healthy friendships or even acquaintances like myself, and solid friendships will do her a world of good," said Jeffries, his stern look turning into an easygoing smile once again. "Well, that'll be easy," said Rose, laughing. "We've already quite fond of her, and she's a lovely little wolf." Jeffries clapped his paws together. "That's what I expected you to say," said Jeffries, beaming at the two of them. Samuel nodded, smiling himself. "There's one thing I wanted to ask you," said Samuel. "Go for it," said Jeffries, sitting back in his chair once again. Samuel coughed and looked down at his paws, then back up at Jeffries. "How did you know Avery completed her spells? We had no idea until she told us and showed us that she could do it," said Samuel. Jeffries closed his eyes and sat back momentarily before speaking. "Well, there were two things it told me. First, when you're a magic user, you can feel when magic is being used around you. Your body gets a subliminal kick that something magical is happening, and you get a gut feeling about the type of magic being used and can even pinpoint the location of the spells used when you've practiced enough. I felt it when the spells completed. Young magic users like Miss Averly tend to let too much of themselves be known when they use their spells. It's something she'll learn to overcome as her ability to focus increases. So will the release of her use shielding decrease." "So that was the first clue," said Jeffries, opening his eyes and staring at Samuel. "The second clue was when she yelled out, 'Woohoo!' when the first spell fired correctly. Her voice carried throughout half the house, and I couldn't help but overhear her excitement at her success. It was then that I brought her more mugs of water to work with. She then let me taste the first batch, which it was a bit bitter. The spell obviously worked. I'm looking forward to what she will be capable of." Samuel smiled and then began laughing. "Of course, she was excited. I'm sure it was one of the best feelings she's had in ages, or ever in that matter," said Samuel. Rose laughed along with him, and Jeffries couldn't help himself but to join in. The three of them sat there around the table, laughing to themselves, imagining the wolf's excited exclamation. Samuel was the first to quiet down, wiping a small tear away from his eye. Jeffries stopped next, and Rose followed. "There's one thing I need to talk to you both as well," said Jeffries, leaning back into his chair and folding his arm once again. "Yes," responded Rose. "Do you know where you need to head to next?" asked Jeffries. Rose and Samuel sat back in their chair and looked at one another. "Martin said to go to a tavern called the Toadstool and look up to his friend Roland," said Samuel. Jeffries sat forward. "That's right. He's a friend of the Amberstone family. He may have information about where Mr. and Mrs. Amberstone have gone off to. At the very least, he'll be able to give you an idea of the direction to search for then. Hopefully," said Jeffries. Rose reached into her pocket and pulled out the town map and laid it flat on the table, rotating it to face Jeffries. "Can you show us where in the city the tavern is, please, Mr. Jeffries?" asked Rose. Jeffries reached across the table and pulled the map towards him. "Certainly," said Jeffries, reaching for the pen he had placed back in his pocket after completing his notes for the two of them. Jeffries scanned the map, and then leaning over the paper, made a small circular motion with his pen and tapped the paper with the pen's nib. Jeffries rotated the map back towards Rose and Samuel and tapped the map again with his pen. "It's there, in the center of Middletown," said Jeffries. Rose stared at the ink circle as it lay drying on the paper. It wasn't far from the tram station they had passed through on their way to the post office. "You need to take the tram again and get off at the Middletown stop. Should be able to walk to the tavern pretty easily. They've installed gas lights down to the main drag of that part of town, so it shouldn't be too hard to find," said Jeffries. Jeffries placed one finger at the little tram icon representing the tram station and traced his finger in a straight line down the road until it ended on a little red stamped toadstool with the shield sign imprinted over it, designating it as a tavern. "It's one of the oldest taverns in Tanzania, and Roe is well acquainted with other magic users," said Jeffries. Rose blinked. "You mean he's a magic user as well?" asked Rose. Jeffries nodded. "Oh yes, he's one of the more powerful magic users in the city. The Toadstool is a magically run establishment. It brings a lot of tourists in," said Jeffries. Now it was Samuel's turn to blink. "What do you mean it's a magically run establishment?" said Samuel. Jeffries smiled. "Exactly that, Samuel. Rose enchanted the plates, draft mugs, and everything inside the place to be useful in running a tavern by himself. Even the ovens produce their own meals prepared by self-mixing bowls. It's the only way one toad could run the whole establishment without it going under. He's a workaholic, that Rose," said Jeffries. "You mean that plates bring them out to their customer when they're ready and clear themselves when they're done?" asked Rose incredulously. Jeffries nodded. "Yes, it looks fancy, but it's just a very efficient use of enchantment spells. He always was one to go overboard when it came to showmanship," said Jeffries. "That still sounds amazing to see," said Rose. Jeffries smiled at her. "It is. It's all very whimsical, if I must say," said Jeffries. "So we're to head there and try and find information on the Amberstones if we can," said Samuel. "Yes, that's the plan at the moment. We should have the younglings back at the house by late tomorrow night. I paid them double their rate to make sure they didn't slow down when they got the children," said Jeffries. "In the meantime, I need you five to go and try and find the whereabouts of Mr. and Mrs. Amberstone so we can reunite the family as soon as possible. I know it's asking a lot of you considering we just met." Jeffries trailed off. Rose took the map and folded it back up, handing it to Samuel, who put it in his shirt pocket. "Don't you worry about it. We're more than happy to help find Samson and Tamaris's parents if we can, and as long as we let our families know where we're going, so they don't worry about us, we should be fine to help," said Rose. Jeffrey smiled appreciatively. "Thank you. I'm sure they're, with your help, figure out what exactly happened to them," said Jeffries. "Shall we head over to the tavern soon?" asked Samuel. "That would be good. You may want to make it for the dinner rush. It's quite a show," said Jeffries. Jeffries reached into his pants pocket and pulled out a small green velvet satchel. It jingled mutely as he tossed it across the table and landed in front of Rose and Samuel. "This is for you to enjoy yourselves at the tavern. I recommend the squash and barley soup," said Jeffries. Rose and Samuel stared at the small satchel that lay before them. "We couldn't possibly take your money," said Rose. Samuel began to agree when Jeffries cut him off. "Nonsense. I'm asking you to do something for me that's completely out of the norm for any of you." "I'm going to pay you for your time and effort," said Jeffries, matter-of-factly. "Take the pouch and enjoy your night. You're young, in a brand new city, and you're about to see one of the gems of the city. There's no point in not enjoying yourselves while you can." Rose reached out and grasped the satchel. It was densely packed with small metal coins. She stuffed it in her pocket and thanked him. Samuel thanked him as well. "That's very kind of you, sir. But we would have done it regardless of whether there was payment of any kind. We like Samson and Tamis and their brothers and sisters, and it's nice to do something nice for someone else," said Samuel. "I know," said Jeffries, "but you need to understand that I'm not asking you to do some small task, and there may be no short amount of peril waiting for you in the future, so take these coins as a down payment and we'll sort something else out for you once you're back from your travel." Samuel and Rose smiled tentatively and thanked the wombat once again. The conversation moved on to Barklin and Averley. "I'm sure Barklin is halfway through what he borrowed from your library already," said Rose. "Fast reader, is he?" asked Jeffries, raising an eyebrow. "I've seen him read full books in a single day. Not one, but multiple. It seems to be one of his greatest passions other than sleeping," said Samuel. Rose laughed. "That's true. Back when we were younger, he would always carry a book with him wherever he went. School or play, he always had one handy. He used to cause our teachers no end of frustration reading his books in class regardless of what was being taught," said Rose. Jeffries laughed. "I bet you're after my own heart," said Jeffries, smiling. Samuel smiled up at him. "You enjoy reading as well, do you?" asked Samuel, curious. "Oh yes, there's not much to do once the house is cleaned. I've been catching up on much of my favorite authors for the last few months. That reminds me, I should send Martin a selection of what I've read. He's one for those romance novels. I'll have to send him a few when I get the chance," said Jeffries. I'm sure he would be appreciative, said Rose. Jeffries nodded at the mouse. Do you think Averly would calm down a bit now that we've given her some time to? Asked Rose. I would think so, said Samuel. You may want to go check on the two of them, said Jeffries, twirling his pen between his fingers. Probably a good idea, said Samuel. I'll send a message to Roe that you're on the way and that he's to give you a proper show and meal, said Jeffries. Thank you. I'm sure we'll enjoy ourselves, said Rose. Rose and Samuel got up from the table and pushed their chairs underneath where they had sat, thanked Jeffries again, and left the lounge, leaving Jeffries sitting at the table, still twirling his pen in one paw. Rose and Samuel made their way up the flight of stairs up to their rooms, passing the line of paintings that hung along the staircase wall and the hallway leading to their rooms. Rose pushed at her doorway and reached out to Samuel, who was waiting by his. Rose took his paw on her own and squeezed it gently. Samuel smiled at her appreciatively, turned to the door, and went inside. Samuel found Barkland laying on his bed, the book he had been reading spread over his face, rising and falling rhythmically with his breathing. Barkland was asleep and snoring gently against the pages that lay across his head. Samuel walked over to the bed and shook him awake. Time to wake up, Barkland. Work to do, said Samuel. It was something that Samuel had often repeated when finding Barkland asleep in his room. Barkland stirred and sat up slowly, the book sliding from his face and landing on his stomach, where his paws were ready to catch it. Oh, sorry, Samuel. I guess I got a little too comfortable, said Barkland, yawning gently into one of his upraised paws. That's all right, Barky. Mr. Jeffries has told us where we need to go to get to the tavern Martin wanted us to visit, said Samuel. Barkland stretched and swung his legs out over the edge of the bed, standing out from where he had been sleeping. Righto. Shall we go and get the ladies and head out then? Asked Barkland sleepishly. Samuel nodded. Yes, we'd better get going. Apparently there's a show that we're not to miss, said Samuel. Great, that sounds pleasant. Do you think we should get a bite to eat? I've forgotten to eat again. The books are just far too interesting to leave them, said Barkland, rubbing his stomach absentmindedly with one paw. Sure thing. Mr. Jeffries gave us a small pouch of coins so we could try the food there. He recommended the soup, said Samuel, smiling. Barkland smiled at Samuel. I do love a good soup with fresh crusty bread and a pat of buttercream, said Barkland. I'm sure they'll have something you'll like, said Samuel, smiling coyly at his friend. The two of them walked from their room, Barkland closing the door behind him, and made their way across the hallway to Rose and Averly's room. Samuel knocked twice on the door. Come in, Rose said from the other side, and they entered. Averly was sitting on her bed, paper spread around her in a wide arc, her black notebook resting in front of her on her folded legs. Rose was sitting next to her, studying the script she had been working on. Rose had one page in front of her, scrutinizing the paper, and placed it back on the bed, completing the arc. It's all very fancy stuff, said Rose appreciatively. Averly smiled up at Barkland and Samuel as they entered. Hey guys, said Averly, happily enough. Hey yourself, said Barkland, standing over the paperwork and scanning each page. Looks like you've been busy. Sure have. It's been a good day, said Averly, laughing to herself. Her mood had improved dramatically since leaving the lounge. Are you ready to head out to the tavern? Asked Rose to Samuel and Barkland. They nodded. We are. Are you two up for a trip to Middletown? Asked Samuel to Barkland and Averly. Averly gathered the papers into a small stack and placed them next to her pillow on the bed. Yep. I've been looking forward to getting out of this house and having a look around, said Averly, stretching her arms over her head. The hours of study had taken their toll on her. Barkland smiled at Averly. Let's get going, then. I'm rather hungry myself, said Barkland. Wait until we get to the tram station. It's stunning, said Rose thoughtfully. Before we get going, do you want to split up the money that Jeffries gave us, Rose? Asked Samuel. Oh, sure thing, said Rose, reaching into her pocket and pulling out the green satchel. Rose pulled the ribbon that held it shut with both paws and dumped the contents of the pouch out onto Averly's bedspread. The coins jingled as they met each other on the comforter. Let me split these up, said Rose, making quick work of the pile. Her fingers moved dexterously from coin to coin, creating 4 small piles from the larger main pile until there were no coins remaining between them. Where did the money come from? Asked Averly. Mr. Jeffries gave it to us so that we could enjoy our night, said Rose, gathering the nearest pile with both paws and handing it to Averly, who accepted the amount within her own. That was nice of him, said Barkland, as Rose handed him his pile in much the same way. Yes, we didn't ask for it, but he wouldn't take no for an answer, said Samuel. Rose reached out over the side of the bed and handed him his coins before gathering the remaining pile and placed it back in the green satchel and tightened the light green ribbon with both paws. She tied the ends between themselves and stuffed the now considerably lighter pouch into the larger brown pouch she wore around her neck. The others did the same with their own share of their coins. After that was done, Averly looked up at the others and across from her. So we're to take the tram into Middletown and head over to the Toadstool and meet this Rowland character to see if he knows where the Amberstone parents have gone? Asked Averly. Samuel nodded. That's the plan. Supposedly, he's going to be able to show us the whereabouts of the two of them, or at least to point us in the right direction where they could have gone, said Samuel. That's right. The tavern is supposed to be a wonderful place as well, said Rose. What do you mean? Asked Barklin and Averly together. I don't want to say. It would be a surprise. It should be a surprise, but I'm sure you'll get a kick out of it once we get there, said Rose. Barklin scowled. He didn't really like surprises, and Rose was prone to hiding things when she felt it would be funny or fun to make him figure it out. Rose looked up at Barklin and seeing his scowl laughed. Oh, lighten up, Barky. It's not that sort of surprise, said Rose, smiling deviously up at him. Barklin's scowl lightened as he smiled in spite of himself. I'm sure it'll be great. Are you ready to go, Averly? Asked Barklin. Averly looked up at him and nodded. Yes, I think so. Let me make sure that I have everything I need and we can get going, said Averly, reaching for the black notebook before her and placing it in her shirt pocket, where it hung heavily against her chest. She buttoned the flap above the pocket, securing the book, which revealed her locket, which glittered in the late afternoon light. Averly reached reflexively and hid the locket into the folds of her shirt.
Hi everybody. So I've made a new store called animalquest.shop, and I made my first shirt, Barklin Reading, at the Amberstone's house, and I would ask that you go and buy those there. I'll make a few bucks each time you buy something from there, and I have men, women's, baby clothing, and buttons, as well as other accessories, including dog bandanas, which I think are pretty cool, and I'll be adding more merch every week or two for that store as the stories progress and the sequels are written and read. I'll do the same for Divergent Mind. The link again is animalquest.shop. The link for Divergent Mind will be divergentmind.shop as well. Thank you so much. Jay. Please visit anchor.fm/divergentmind to leave a message so that I may get back to you. Thank you. Have a nice day. So Anchor is asking me to ask you to support me financially. I would ask that you go to my Patreon to do that, which is patreon.com/divergentmind. It means you can either become a monthly subscriber at a different tier of $1 to $3 to $5. I'm not looking for a lot. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for anything. This is going to go to the end of my podcast. I don't like it when podcasts straight up ask you for money when I'm doing okay. Well, I'm not doing okay. I'm surviving now to the point that I can make this. I would love to be able to make improvements to this by, say, so basically I'm running off an iPad, and I would like to improve it by getting different things that would make it better. Maybe some headphones that monitor output, or a better mic, though the mic I got was from JWife, so I might not even use the better mic. You know what I mean? It's all about whatever I need at the time, but really it's just to get healthy again, because I'm currently over 300 pounds and I don't want to die that young. I would really like to be able to afford some vegetables so I can go back to my vegetarian diet, because being this big sucks. And I'm happy to sit in a chair all day, but I really got to walk my butt off, literally. So that's what the money would be for. It would be for healthy food, because I can't afford it. I can afford ramen and pasta and rice and beans, but I can't live on carbs, because that's how you get this big on antipsychotics. Junk food and carbs, which is just cheap and plentiful around me. So I would like to leave my house and just lose some weight. And to do that, I would like to go to the store and buy some vegetables, please. But you don't have to do anything. I'm not asking you to. I'm not begging. I'll figure it out on my own. Much pleasure, Jay. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that I have a YouTube channel called Taught Myself, And then I've decided to start selling merch already with a phrase that my brother showed me saying, "My disability is invisible," of which I made a hat for myself. So I decided to make hats, shirts, hoodies, for both men and women on Spreadshirt.com. All you have to do is search for "My disability is invisible." It's in green, and that's mine. You'll know it's me because when you click the sale icon, the same little Divergent Mind icon comes up. And I hope you'll support me. I make about $5 per shirt or per sale. Everything else goes to Spreadshirt. But that's okay because it's still a better deal than a lot of other places. And I really hope you'll support me. Come check me out on the YouTube. Teach me how to do that properly so I can have a community there too. And I await your response. Have a lovely day. Jay.
Hey people, take a listen to the Divergent Mind podcast. You get both insight into living with a serious mental illness and get to listen to a lovely tale about a journey cute little animals need to take. Don't miss out, and remember, divergent minds don't need to think alike.
Please go to ratethispodcast.com/divergentmind and tell me what you think. Thank you very much. Yours truly, Jay.